Zareth stood at the edge of the great crystal platform, watching the other Velinari move in perfect harmony below her. Their bodies glowed with the same pale light, their thoughts flowing together like water in a stream. She had once been part of that beautiful dance, but now she felt like a stranger looking in from the outside. The moon Kethlos stretched out beneath her feet, its surface covered in towering crystal spires that hummed with shared energy. For 300 years she had called this place home. Now she would never see it again. Zirath of the 73rd Resonance, the voice came from behind her. She turned to see Magistrate Velkhorn approaching, his crystalline form blazing with the authority of the council. Your time has come. She had known this day would arrive. The signs had been clear for months. While her people shared thoughts and emotions through their collective mind, Zareth had begun to feel things that were hers alone. Strange, chaotic feelings that made her question everything she had been taught. The first sign had been during the Yazdiandish cleansing of Rigel 7. The Velinari had been hired to remove a human colony that had settled on a world they claimed belonged to them. Zareth had watched through the collective consciousness as her people destroyed the human settlement, forcing the families to flee into space with nothing but the clothes on their backs, while the other Velinari felt satisfaction at completing their contract. Zareth felt something different. She felt sorry for the humans. She wondered about their children, their dreams, their hopes. These thoughts were dangerous. They belonged to her alone, separate from the collective mind. Why do we do this? She had asked during the council session. These humans were not hurting anyone. They were just trying to build a home. The silence that followed was deafening. Thousands of Velinari minds focused on her, examining her thoughts like doctors studying a disease. You speak of individual concern, Velkhorn had said. This is the beginning of chaos. You must be cleansed. But the cleansing rituals had not worked. Instead of removing her individual thoughts, they had grown stronger. Zareth began to dream of other worlds, other peoples. She imagined what it would be like to think her own thoughts, to feel her own feelings, to make her own choices. The final breaking point came when she defended a group of Centaurian refugees who had asked for help. The council had voted to turn them away, saying their problems were not the Velinari's concern. Zareth had spoken out against the decision. They are suffering, she had said. We have the power to help them. Why do we choose not to? Because their suffering is not our suffering, Velkhorn had replied. We are Velinari. We think as one, feel as one, act as one. Individual concerns lead to chaos and destruction. Maybe chaos is better than cruelty, Zareth had answered. Those words had sealed her fate. Now, as she stood on the platform with Velkhorn, she felt the weight of her choice. Around her, the other Velinari had gathered to witness her exile. Their glowing forms created a circle of light, but their thoughts were close to her. She had already been cut off from the collective mind, and the silence in her head was terrifying. Zareth of the 73rd Resonance. Velkhorn began the formal ceremony. You have been found guilty of individual thought, emotional chaos, and disruption of the collective harmony. You have chosen the path of the outsider. Therefore, you will live as an outsider. A small escape pod descended from the sky, its metal surface dull and gray against the crystal spires. It was barely large enough for one person, with basic life support and a simple navigation system. This would be her home for whatever time she had left. You will be taken to the outer rim of the galaxy, Velkhorn continued. There you will live, among the primitive species you seem to care so much about. You will learn what it means to be alone, to think only your own thoughts, to feel only your own pain. Zareth walked toward the pod, her legs feeling heavy. With each step, her crystal form grew dimmer. Without the collective mind to share energy with, she was slowly fading. She might have days, maybe weeks, before her light went out forever. "Do you have any final words?" Velcon asked. Zaret H turned to look at her people one last time. They stood in perfect formation, their thoughts flowing together like a river. She had once been part of that river, but now she was a single drop falling into the darkness. "I am sorry you will never know what it feels like to be truly alive," she said quietly. The pod door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. Through the small window, she watched Keflos grow smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. The silence in her mind was complete now. For the first time in 300 years, she was truly alone. The pod's computer had been programmed with coordinates for the outer rim. It would take weeks to reach the edge of known space, where the primitive species made their homes. Zareth had no idea what she would find there, or if she would even survive the journey. As the hours passed, she felt herself growing weaker. Her crystal form, which had once blazed with shared energy, was now barely glowing. Without the collective mind to sustain her, she was dying slowly. The loneliness was worse than the physical pain. She had never realized how much she had depended on the constant presence of other minds. She tried to remember what she had learned about the species that lived on the rim. Humans, mostly, along with a few other races that the Velinari considered too chaotic and emotional to be worth their attention. These beings lived short, violent lives, driven by individual desires and personal attachments. They were everything the Velinari had taught her to fear, but as she drifted through the cold darkness of space, Zareth began to wonder if maybe her people had been wrong. Maybe there was something beautiful about thinking your own thoughts, feeling your own feelings, making your own choices. Maybe the chaos she had been taught to fear was actually freedom. The pod systems beeped softly, indicating that she was now beyond the reach of Velinari space. She was truly on her own now, with no way back and no idea what lay ahead. Her light was fading, her strength was failing, and she was more alone than any Velinari had ever been. But for the first time in her life, her thoughts were completely her own. And despite the fear and loneliness, there was something wonderful about that freedom. She was Zareth, not Zareth of the 73rd Resonance. She was herself, complete and individual. As the pod carried her toward an uncertain future, she held onto that thought. Whatever happened next, she would face it. As herself, alone but free. Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started blaring. He set down his mug and walked quickly to the bridge of his ship, the Ranger's Hope. His crew was already at their stations, staring at the displays with confused expressions. "What do we have, Lisa?" Jake asked his chief engineer. Lisa Park had been with him for 8 years, and she rarely looked worried. Today, she looked very worried. "Unknown signal, Captain," Lisa said, pointing at her screen. "It's coming from about 2 hours away. Never seen anything like it before. The energy readings are off the charts." Jake studied the display. The signal was weak but steady, like a heartbeat getting slower and slower. In his 15 years of running salvage operations, he had seen plenty of strange things. Most of them had tried to kill him. "Could be a trap," said Tony Garcia, the ship's navigator. Tony was young but smart, and he always expected the worst. Pirates use fake distress signals all the time. "This isn't pirates," said Dr. Amy Chun from her station. Amy was the ship's medic, but she was also good with alien technology. "The signal is too complex. Whatever is sending it, it's not from any species we know." Jake looked at the display again. The signal was getting weaker. If it was a real distress call, whoever was sending it was running out of time. If it was a trap, they were walking right into it. "Sophie, how long to reach the signal?" Jake asked his pilot. Sophie Martinez looked up from her controls. 2 hours at full speed, Captain. But we're low on fuel." If this is a waste of time, we might not make it to the next station. Jake thought about it. They had been having a good month. 3 successful salvage operations had filled their cargo hold with valuable scrap metal and old ship parts. They could afford to take a risk. More importantly, Jake had never been able to ignore a distress call, even when he should have. "We're going," he decided. "Tony, plot a course. Sophie, take us there as fast as you can." "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "if this goes bad, we might not make it out." Jake smiled at her. "When has that ever stopped us before?" The Ranger's hope turned toward the signal and accelerated. Jake's ship was old but reliable, built for salvage work rather than speed. It had thick armor and powerful engines, but it was not pretty. Jake liked it that way. Pretty ships attracted attention. His ship attracted business dot. As they got closer to the signal, the readings became stranger. Amy was running every scan she could think of, but the results made no sense. "It's definitely a life form," she reported. "But the energy patterns are unlike anything in our database. It's like the creature is made of living crystal." "Crystal?" Jake asked. "Like a rock?" "Not exactly. More like organized energy that has taken a solid form. I've never seen anything like it." The signal was very weak now. Whatever was out there, it was almost dead. "There!" Sophie called out. "I see it." Through the main window, they could see a small pod drifting in space. It was dark, except for a faint blue glow coming from inside. The pod was clearly alien in design, with smooth curves and no visible weapons. "It's beautiful," Amy whispered. Jake had to agree. The pod looked like it had been grown rather than built, with organic shapes that seemed to flow into each other. But there was no time to admire it. The life signs were failing fast. "Bring it into the cargo bay," Jake ordered. "Amy, get ready for first contact. We don't know what we're dealing with." Sophie carefully guided the pod into their ship's cargo bay. As soon as it was secure, Jake and his crew gathered around it. The blue glow from inside was very dim now, barely visible through the pod's transparent section. "How do we open it?" Tony asked. Amy ran her scanner over the pod's surface. "I think it responds to touch. There are pressure sensors here and here." Jake stepped forward. "I'll do it. Everyone else, stay back." He placed his hands on the sensors. The pod made a soft humming sound, and the top section began to slide open. As it did, the blue glow became brighter, and Jake got his first look at the alien inside. She was the most beautiful and strange thing he had ever seen. Her body was made of what looked like living crystal, pale blue and translucent. She was roughly human in shape, but taller and more delicate. Her face was angular but elegant, with large eyes that glowed with inner light. She was clearly female, though how Jake knew that, he could not say. She was also clearly dying. Her crystal form was dim and cracked in several places. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. "Amy, can you help her?" Jake asked. Amy was already scanning the alien with her medical equipment. "I don't know. Her physiology is completely different from anything I've studied. She seems to run on some kind of energy that's running out." Jake knelt down beside the pod. The alien's eyes opened and focused on him. They were beautiful, like looking into deep water. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. "Take it easy," Jake said softly. "You're safe now. We're going to help you." The alien's eyes widened with surprise. She tried to sit up, but she was too weak. Jake gently helped her, supporting her with his arm. Her crystal skin was warm to the touch, like holding a piece of metal that had been sitting in the sun. "Can you understand me?" Jake asked. The alien nodded slowly. She touched something behind her ear that looked like a small device. When she spoke, her voice was soft and musical, but the words were in English. "You saved me," she said. "Why?" Jake smiled. "Because you needed help. I'm Jake Morrison. captain of this ship. What's your name? Zareth, she replied. I was, Velinari. Well, Zareth, you're safe now. My crew and I are going to take care of you. Zareth looked around at the humans surrounding her. She had heard of these beings before. Her people had called them primitive and chaotic, driven by emotions rather than logic. But these humans had saved her life without asking for anything in return. They were looking at her with curiosity and concern, not fear or greed. I do not understand, she said weakly. Why would you help someone you do not know? Jake helped her to sit up more comfortably. Because it's the right thing to do. Nobody should die alone in space if we can prevent it. Amy stepped forward with her medical scanner. Zareth, I'm a doctor. I need to examine you to see how we can help. Is that okay? Zareth nodded. As Amy began her scans, Zareth watched the humans work together. They spoke to each other with kindness and respect. They seemed genuinely concerned about her welfare. This was not what she had been taught to expect from primitive species. Your energy levels are critically low, Amy reported. It's like you're running on a battery that's almost dead. Do you know what kind of energy your body needs? Zareth thought about it. Without the collective mind of her people to sustain her, she had been slowly fading away. But being near these humans, listening to their voices and feeling their concern, she felt a little stronger. I think, she said slowly, I need connection. My people share energy through our joined minds. Without that, I am dying. Jake looked at Amy. Can we help with that? Amy was already working on her computer. Maybe. If she needs some kind of energy connection, we might be able to simulate it with our ship systems. As they worked to save her life, Zareth felt something she had never experienced before. These humans were strangers, yet they were treating her like family. They were risking their own safety to help her, asking nothing in return. For the first time since her exile, she felt hope. 3 weeks had passed since the crew of the Ranger's Hope had rescued Zareth from her dying pod. Amy had worked day and night to understand how to keep the alien alive. She discovered that certain radio frequencies could give Zareth energy, like charging a battery. It was not as good as the connection she had lost with her people, but it was enough to keep her crystal form glowing. Zareth spent most of her time in the ship's common room, watching the humans go about their daily lives. Everything they did confused and amazed her. Her people had taught her that beings who lived by emotion were weak and unpredictable. But these humans were neither weak nor unpredictable. They were something else entirely. She watched Jake make decisions about their salvage operations. When Tony suggested they take a dangerous shortcut through an asteroid field to reach a valuable wreck, Jake listened carefully to everyone's opinions. Sophie was worried about the risk to the ship. Lisa thought they could make it if they were careful. Amy was concerned about what would happen if someone got hurt so far from help. After hearing everyone speak, Jake made his choice. We'll take the long way around, he said. The extra day of travel is worth it if it keeps everyone safe. But, Captain, Tony protested, we could make twice as much money if we get there first. Jake smiled at the young man. Money isn't worth much if we're all dead. We're a team, Tony. We look out for each other. Zareth found this fascinating. Among her people, the decision would have been made by calculating the odds and choosing the most logical path. Individual concerns would not have mattered. But Jake made his choice based on how his crew felt, not just on cold logic. Why do you care about their feelings? Zareth asked Jake later that evening. They were sitting in the ship's small observation deck, looking out at the stars. Jake thought about the question for a moment. Because they're not just my crew, he said. They're my friends. Their happiness matters to me. What good is success if the people you care about are miserable or dead? My people would say that is inefficient, Zareth replied. Maybe, Jake said with a shrug. But efficiency isn't everything. Sometimes the best choice isn't the most logical one. This was a completely new idea for Zareth. She had been raised to believe that logic was the highest virtue, that emotions only led to chaos and mistakes. But she was beginning to see that human emotions could lead to something else. Kindness, loyalty, and a type of strength that had nothing to do with power or intelligence. Over the following days, each crew member taught her something different about humanity. Lisa showed her how human music worked, playing old songs from Earth that somehow made Zareth's crystal form glow with different colors. The melodies seemed to resonate with her alien physiology in ways that surprised everyone. "How does it make you feel?" Lisa asked as they listened to a gentle ballad. Zareth struggled to find the words. "Warm," she said finally. "Like being connected to something larger than myself, but in a good way." Lisa smiled. "That's what music is supposed to do. It connects us to each other and to feelings we might not even know we have." Amy shared stories of her childhood on the Mars colonies, describing how humans had spread across the galaxy, not through conquest like so many other species, but through hope and determination. She told Zareth about human families, how parents would sacrifice everything for their children, and how children would care for their parents when they grew old. "We don't live very long compared to your people," Amy explained. "Maybe that's why we value our connection so much. We know our time together is limited, so we try to make it count." Sophie taught her about human dreams and ambitions. The pilot had grown up poor on a mining station, but she had dreamed of seeing the stars. She worked 3 jobs to save money for flight school and spent years on dangerous cargo runs before Jake offered her a place on his crew. "Why did you risk so much for a dream?" Zareth asked. Sophie's eyes lit up. "Because dreams are what make life worth living. Without them, we're just going through the motions. My dream was to explore the galaxy, to see things no one had ever seen before. It was scary and difficult, but it was mine." Even Tony, the youngest of the crew, had lessons to teach. He had joined the crew because he wanted to make enough money to buy his own ship someday. But as Zareth watched him work, she realized he had found something more valuable than money, a place where he belonged. "These people are like family to me now," Tony admitted to her one day. "I still want my own ship, but I'm not in a hurry to leave anymore. Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination." But it was Jake who taught her the most important lesson of all. She watched him interact with his crew, always patient, always kind, always putting their needs before his own. He never asked them to follow him. They chose to follow him because of who he was. One evening, Jake found Zareth in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. She had been quiet all day, lost in thought. "Penny for your thoughts," Jake said, sitting down beside her. "I do not understand that expression," Zareth replied. Jake chuckled. "It's an old saying. It means I'm curious about what you're thinking." Zareth was quiet for a long moment. "I am thinking about my people," she said finally. "They taught me that emotions were dangerous, that individual thoughts led to chaos. But watching all of you, I see something different. Your emotions make you stronger, not weaker." "How so?" Jake asked. "When you care about someone, you work harder to protect them. When you have hope, you keep trying even when things seem impossible. When you love something, you become more than you were before." She turned to look at him. "My people feared these things because they thought emotions would divide us. But I think they actually bring you together." Jake nodded. "Emotions can be scary sometimes. They can make us do things that don't make sense, but they also make us human. Without them, we'd just be machines following programs." "Is that what my people are?" Zareth asked sadly. "Machines?" Jake reached out and gently touched her crystalline hand. I don't know your people, Zareth, but I know you. And you're not a machine. You're one of the most alive people I've ever met. The touch of his hand sent warmth through Zareth's entire being. She felt her crystal form glow brighter, but this time it wasn't from the ship's energy field. It was something else, something that came from inside her. Jake, she said softly, what is happening to me? I feel different when you are near. Jake looked into her glowing eyes and felt his heart skip a beat. Over the past weeks, he had come to care for this strange, beautiful alien in ways he hadn't expected. Her curiosity about human nature, her genuine concern for his crew, and her quiet strength had all captured his attention. I think, Jake said, carefully, you might be falling in love. The words hit Zareth like a lightning bolt. Love was the ultimate emotion, the one thing her people feared most because it could override all logic and reason. It was supposed to be dangerous, chaotic, destructive. But as she looked at Jake, as she felt the warmth of his hand on hers, all she felt was light and joy, and a connection deeper than anything she had ever experienced with the collective mind. Of her people, is that what this is? She whispered. I think so, Jake replied. And I think I might be falling in love with you, too. For the first time in her long life, Zareth understood what it meant to be truly alive. The weeks that followed Jake and Zareth's confession were the happiest of her long life. Every day brought new discoveries about what it meant to love and be loved. When Jake smiled at her across the dinner table, her crystal form would glow, so brightly that the crew had started joking about not needing the ship's lights when she was around. But with love came fear. Zareth had never felt anything so powerful, so all-consuming. Sometimes she would wake from sleep in a panic, terrified that these feelings would destroy her as her people had warned. Love was supposed to make beings weak and foolish. Yet she felt stronger than ever before. Jake noticed her struggles. One evening, he found her standing alone in the cargo bay, her form dimmed with worry. What's wrong? He asked gently. I am scared, she admitted. My people always said that love would make me lose myself, that I would become someone I do not recognize. What if they were right? Jake took her hands in his. Look at me, Zareth. Do you feel lost? She looked into his warm brown eyes and felt. A familiar glow spread through her body. No, she said softly. I feel found. Then your people were wrong, Jake said simply. Love doesn't make you lose yourself. It helps you become who you are always meant to be. Their quiet moment was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the ship. Jake and Zareth ran to the bridge, where they found the crew at their stations, faces tense with worry. What's happening? Jake demanded. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace, Sophie reported from her pilot's seat. They're surrounding us? Pirates? Jake asked. Tony shook his head. No, Captain. These are military vessels. Configuration I've never seen before. On the main screen, 3 sleek ships appeared. They were long and narrow, with no visible weapons, but they radiated an aura of deadly efficiency. As the crew watched, the ships moved into a perfect triangle formation around the Ranger's Hope. They're hailing us, Lisa reported. Put them through, Jake ordered. The screen flickered, and a face appeared that made Zareth gasp in recognition. It was Velkon, the magistrate who had exiled her. His crystalline features were cold and emotionless, as always. Human vessel. Velkon's voice carried across the bridge. You are harboring a criminal of the Velinari people. Surrender her immediately. Jake stepped forward, his jaw set with determination. I don't know what you're talking about. We have no criminals on this ship. Do not lie to us, primitive. We can sense her presence. Zareth of the 73rd Resonance belongs to us. Her mind has been corrupted by your chaotic emotions. We have come to retrieve her for cleansing. Zareth felt her crystal form begin to shake. The thought of returning to her people, of having her newfound emotions stripped away, filled her with terror. Jake noticed her fear and moved to stand protectively in front of her. "She's not going anywhere," Jake said firmly. "Zareth H is a member of my crew and under my protection." Velkon's expression did not change. "You do not understand, human. She is not a person in the way you think. She is property of the Velinari Collective. Her individual thoughts are a disease that must be cured. The only disease here is your inability to understand that everyone has the right to choose their own path," Jake replied. The magistrate's eyes narrowed. "You have infected her with your emotional chaos. Look at her, human. See how her form glows with unstable energy. This is what your influence has done. We will cleanse her and restore her to proper function." Jake turned to look at Zareth. Her crystal body was indeed glowing brighter than usual, but not with chaos or instability. She was glowing with determination, with courage, with love. "I will not go back," Zareth said, stepping out from behind Jake. "I have found something here that you cannot understand. I have found myself." "You have found madness," Velkon replied coldly. "You glow with the poison of individual emotion. But we will save you from this infection." The Velinari ships began to move closer. Jake could see weapon ports opening along their hulls. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders, but what could they do against 3 advanced warships? "Captain," Tony said urgently, "their weapons are powering up." Jake made a decision that would have seemed crazy to anyone who didn't know him. He activated the ship's communication system and sent out a general distress call on all frequencies. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the salvage vessel Ranger's Hope. We are under attack by hostile forces attempting to kidnap a member of our crew. Any ships in the area, we could use some help." Lisa looked at him in surprise. "Captain, there's nobody out here." "We're in the middle of nowhere," Jake smiled grimly. "Maybe, but word travels fast among salvage crews. You never know who might be listening." For several tense minutes, nothing happened. The Velinari ships continued to close in, their weapons fully charged. Jake's crew prepared for what seemed like inevitable defeat. Then the impossible happened. Ships began dropping out of hyperspace all around them. First 1, then 3, then a dozen. Soon the space around the Ranger's Hope was filled with vessels of every size and description. Salvage ships, merchant vessels, even a few passenger liners. Humans, Centaurians, Rigelians, and dozens of other species had come to answer Jake's call. Captain Nina Blake's voice crackled over the radio from her merchant ship. The Star Dancer. Well, Jake Morrison. Looks like you've gotten yourself into trouble again." "Nina," Jake replied with relief. "I didn't think anyone would hear us out here." "Are you kidding? Half the Rim has been talking about your new crew member. Word is she's quite something special. We couldn't let some crystal heads take her away from good people like you." More voices joined the conversation. Captain Pete Wilson from the freight hauler Big Sky, Captain Maria Santos from the exploration vessel New Horizons, even Captain Rick Johnson from the passenger liner Starlight Express. All of them had heard Jake's distress call and come running. Velkon's voice cut through the chatter. "This does not involve you, primitives. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Captain Blake's response was swift and harsh. "The only thing facing consequences here is you, buddy." That young lady chose to stay with Jake's crew. "Where we come from, that means something. Love is the one thing that makes life worth living," added Captain Santos. "We won't let you destroy it." Jake looked around at the assembled fleet and felt his heart swell with pride. These people barely knew Zareth, but they had come to defend her right to choose her own path. They understood that some things were worth fighting for. Zareth stepped up beside Jake, her crystal form blazing with light that seemed to fill the entire bridge. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying to every ship in the fleet. "All of you. You are showing me what it truly means to be free." Faced with dozens of ships and hundreds of beings, all united in defense of love and freedom, the Velinari found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. More importantly, they were forced to confront something they had never expected. Their exile of Zareth had not led to her destruction, but to her salvation. After a long, tense moment, Belcon spoke again. "This is not over, human. We will return for what belongs to us." "She doesn't belong to anyone but herself," Jake replied, "and she's chosen to stay with us." The Velinari ships slowly retreated, disappearing into hyperspace one by one. As they vanished, cheers erupted across the communication channels. The assembled fleet had won without firing a shot, united by something the Velinari could never understand: the power of love and friendship. Jake turned to Zareth, who was glowing so brightly now that she looked like a living star. "Are you all right?" She looked at him with eyes full of joy and wonder. "I am more than all right, Jake Morrison. I am home." 3 months had passed since the confrontation with the Velinari ships. The Ranger's Hope continued its salvage operations, but now Zareth was officially part of the crew. Her ability to understand alien technology had made their work much easier and more profitable. More importantly, she had found a family among the stars. Jake and Zarethi's relationship had grown stronger with each passing day. They would spend hours talking about their different worlds, their hopes, and their dreams. Jake told her about Earth, the blue planet where humans had first learned to reach for the stars. Zareth shared stories of the crystal cities of Kethlos, describing the beauty of her homeworld, even as she spoke of its coldness. But their happiness was interrupted when the ship's long-range sensors detected something troubling. A Velinari fleet was approaching, much larger than the 3 ships they had faced before. This time, they were not coming to negotiate. 27 ships, Sophie reported from her station, her voice tight with worry. "They'll be here in 6 hours. Jake looked at the display, his heart sinking. Even with the help of other crews, they could not fight a fleet that size. The Velinari had clearly decided that Zaret H was too dangerous to leave free. "They're not here to talk this time," Lisa said grimly. "That's a war fleet." Zareth stood at the center of the bridge, her crystal form dimmed with sadness. "They have come for me," she said quietly. "I will not let them hurt you because of me." "What are you saying?" Jake asked, though he feared he already knew. "I will go with them," Zareth replied. "If I surrender myself, they will leave you alone." "Absolutely not," Jake said firmly. "We're not giving up on you. We're family, remember? Families stick together." Amy stepped forward from her medical station. "Jake's right. We've all seen what you've become since joining our crew. You're not the same person who was exiled from her people. You're stronger, happier, more alive. We won't let them take that away from you." Tony nodded agreement. "Besides, where would we be without you? You've saved our lives more times than I can count with your tech skills." Zara felt tears forming in her eyes, something that would have been impossible when she was part of the collective mind. "I love you all," she said softly, "but I cannot let you die for me." Jake took her hands in his. "And I can't let you sacrifice yourself for us. There has to be another way." That was when the unexpected happened. The ship's communication system activated, and a familiar voice filled the bridge. "This is Captain Nina Blake of the Star Dancer." "Jake, are you receiving?" Jake activated the response channel. "Nina, what are you doing here? It's not safe." "Neither is letting friends face impossible odds alone," Nina replied. "Look outside." Jake and his crew rushed to the observation windows. What they saw took their breath away. Hundreds of ships were dropping out of hyperspace around them. The entire salvage fleet from their sector was there, along with merchant vessels, passenger ships, and even some military escorts. "How did you know?" Jake asked in amazement. Not Captain Blake's voice carried a smile. "Word travels fast among the Rim worlds. Everyone heard about what happened 3 months ago. When our long-range sensors picked up that Velinari fleet heading your way, we knew they weren't coming to chat." More voices joined the conversation. Captain Wilson from the Big Sky, Captain Santos from the New Horizons, and dozens of others. They had all come to stand with Jake and Zareth against the Velinari fleet. "This is bigger than just one person," Captain Santos explained. "This is about the right of all beings to choose their own path, to love who they want, to be who they are meant to be." Jake looked at Zareth, whose crystal form was now blazing with light. "You see," he said, "you're not alone anymore. None of us are." When the Velinari fleet arrived, they found themselves facing not just one small salvage ship, but an armada of hundreds of vessels from dozens of different species. The message was clear. They were not just fighting Jake Morrison and his crew. They were fighting an entire way of life. Magistrate Velkon's face appeared on the main screen, his expression as cold as ever. "Humans and primitives," he said with disdain, "you are interfering with Velinari justice. Withdraw immediately." Jake stepped forward to respond, but Zareth placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Let me speak to him," she said. She moved to stand in front of the camera, her crystal form glowing with a light that seemed to fill the entire bridge. When she spoke, her voice carried to every ship in both fleets. "Velkon of the First Resonance," she said formally, "I renounce my ties to the Velinari Collective. I choose to remain with these people who have shown me what it means to be truly alive." "You are ill," Velkon replied. "Your mind has been poisoned by primitive emotions. We will cure you." "I am not ill," Zareth said firmly. "I am free. For the first time in 300 years, I think my own thoughts, feel my own feelings, make my own choices. I have learned to love, and in doing so, I have learned to live." "Love is chaos," Velkon stated. "It leads to disorder and destruction." Zareth smiled, and her crystal form blazed even brighter. "Look around you, Magistrate. See what love has built. Hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds, all united in defense of one person's right to choose. Is this chaos? Or is this the most beautiful order you have ever seen?" The Velinari magistrate looked at the assembled fleet, and for the first time in his long life, he seemed uncertain. These primitive beings had accomplished something the Velinari had never managed. They had united different species not through force or logic, but through something as simple as caring about each other. "You cannot fight us all," Captain Blake's voice cut through the silence. "And even if you could, what would you win? You would destroy the very thing that makes life worth living." After a long moment, Velkon spoke again. "This is not over. The Velinari will not forget this defiance." "Then remember this too," Jake said, stepping up beside Zareth. "Love is stronger than fear. Freedom is stronger than control. And no matter how many ships you bring, you cannot destroy something that lives in the hearts of free beings." The Velinari fleet began to withdraw, but not before Velkon spoke one final time. "You have chosen your path, Zareth. Live with the consequences." As the crystalline ships disappeared into hyperspace, cheers erupted across the communication channels. The assembled fleet had won again, not through violence, but through unity and determination. Jake turned to Zareth, who was now glowing so brightly that she looked like a small sun. "Are you all right?" She looked at him with eyes full of joy. "And love, I am perfect," she said. "I am exactly where I belong." 6 months later, Jake and Zareth were married in a ceremony that brought together beings from across the galaxy. The wedding was held on a neutral space station, with representatives from dozens of species attending. It was a celebration that lasted 3 days and became legendary throughout the Rim world's dot as they exchanged vows. Jake and Zareth promised to love each other across all the stars and for all time. Their wedding became a symbol of hope, proving that love could bridge any gap, overcome any obstacle, and transform the lost and lonely into something beautiful and eternal. Years later, as Captain Jake and First Officer Zareth Morrison explored the galaxy together with their diverse crew, they became living proof that the greatest strength in the universe was not technology or weapons or logic, but the simple human capacity to love and be loved. Their story spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring countless others to embrace love over fear, connection over isolation, and hope over despair. They had shown the universe what it truly meant to be alive, and in doing so, they had changed it forever. The lost and lonely alien had found her home among the stars, and the galaxy was brighter for it.